This is a clouds weather alert.
Good Tuesday evening, everybody. Meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center right now, tracking very dangerous Category 5 Hurricane Milton here as it's in toward the Gulf of Mexico. And you do see there a very well-defined eye. There's max sustained winds at 165 miles an hour. I know it had weakened down to a Category 4 at one point as we were looking at things here earlier on in that timeline after we had that Cat 5 become that storyline yesterday, late morning, early afternoon. But a situation we're expecting it not to be a Category 5 when it hits the state of Florida, but something that'll be very serious. 3 is what's projected right now. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a Category 4 when it hits, to be quite honest here. As we're looking at things, I know just going to really have to be watching here very carefully, where it goes more than anything. I mean, a 3 or a 4 is not going to make that big of a difference, but where it goes in terms of that center is going to make a huge difference in terms of storm surge along the west coast of Florida, because if it makes landfall just north of Tampa, we're talking about a catastrophic scenario for Tampa. It's absolutely devastating with storm surge that'll be going in there probably for some miles there around Tampa Bay, and talking about some values up to 15 feet. But if it makes landfall south of Tampa, it's from where that center is to the south, because this storm is not something like the storms we've had with Helene and Dahlia, where they're kind of riding up the coast. This is going across the states, the areas to the north. Where this hits, you're not really going to see that surge factor here come into the picture too much. But areas from near where that makes landfall, where Milton makes landfall into the south, are going to have this catastrophic problems here. So a very, very, very serious situation. It's important to heed all evacuation orders, because we're not going to know exactly where the center is going to cross here until it'll be too late to get out. I know we had so many folks in Hurricane Ian, it was too late for them to evacuate. By the time they realized they were in grave danger with the water rising, and emergency crews couldn't get to them. And we had a tragic, a large number, lose their life there towards southwest Florida in Hurricane Ian, and we do not want a repeat of that here in Florida, whether it's there or really just north of there would be a little bit more likely as we're looking at things here right now. So, got to be really careful with this. Everybody that's expecting that significant storm surge really needs to be following those, evacuation orders, because you can't take any chances in a situation like this. You just have to be really, really cognizant of what's going on. I know I'll be diving into the details here in just a second, but just that infrared satellite imagery just tells this terrible story. I'll go ahead and kind of pause things here and zoom on in, and it's just a terrible, terrible image here. This Category 5 storm. You can see that well-defined structure here. Honestly, I think, and we've noticed this here just in the meteorology community today, it seems like it's been kind of moving a little bit further south than what some of the models had predicted. So that could be, don't know if it will be, but could be slightly better news in terms of storm surge for Tampa. There'll still be big consequences with wind and rain and the like. Could be still pretty serious, but not catastrophic. The catastrophic issues could be down the coast, like closer to Sarasota potentially, or even, a little bit further south, depending on if it makes landfall, around Sarasota. Then we're talking about some of those other communities as well, which I'm going to get to here in just a moment as we're tracking this very dangerous situation. I know Category 5 on that Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale. So you see the imagery behind this graphic in terms of the category information, wind information, damage information. That's from Tyndall Air Force Base there, after Hurricane Michael came through and snapped all the trees. And this storm named Milton, ironically, replaced Michael here. And it's also a situation where it looks like Milton, if it makes landfall after midnight there on, that Thursday, it'll be making landfall to 6th-year anniversary there of what happened with Michael. So just very, bizarre set of circumstances. The time might be like 12 hours apart, but nonetheless here, that's just crazy to think about as we're looking at things that probably won't be a Category 5 when it comes ashore. The forecast is for a 3. Again, I'm kind of thinking maybe a 4. You're supposed to prepare for a category higher. So everybody up and down that coast needs to be prepared for a Category 4 hurricane landfall here late tomorrow night. So again, a very serious set of circumstances here. as we're looking at things, as we're tracking Hurricane Milton, again, a Category 5 storm. And I'm going to go ahead and get the graphics ready to go here in terms of our other source. And now you can see here that information at 7 o'clock. Advisory from the Hurricane Center in Miami, 165-mile-an-hour winds. That is, one of the higher numbers we'll ever see. That's higher than what Michael made landfall with. I believe it's the same as Andrew's landfall winds there after the post-analysis was done on that one and on Michael. Neither one were noted this high in the real time. As the present movement there is northeast at 10 miles an hour. The minimum central pressure, 902 millibars, is, one of the stronger pressures we've ever really seen here in toward the Atlantic Basin with a hurricane. And we had even one a little lower with this storm last night. It was in the 890s there, I know, which is just remarkable. Lowest we've seen, I believe, since Wilma in '05. And that, that year we had quite a few storms of some low pressures, that were extreme at points. Katrina, Rita, and Wilma that year in '05. And now here in 2024, a storm that is up there with one of the lower pressures we've ever seen here, which is just, indicative of the extreme intensity. Again, not expected to hit at the 5, but it may not really matter that much at all. I mean, the wind field is going to be getting bigger. That surge is going to already be kind of built in. So just an extremely, extremely dangerous situation. As we're looking, I know, again, that pressure, though, is just remarkable from a meteorological standpoint here. As we're looking in the basin, I mean, you just don't see numbers like that here in meteorology. I mean, that is just extraordinarily low. As we go ahead and now say you our hurricane cone of concern here and the watches and warnings. You can see in toward that red area there, that's a hurricane warning that goes for a bunch of the state here. In fact, I have been on another source that says it a little bit better. So let me go ahead and kind of go on over there right now. It's going to be our source where I still have the wind gust numbers up, which are not, anything too crazy right now. But here's that hurricane warning. You can see it county by county. So it goes all the way from Lee County in Florida up the west coast to Levy County. Not everybody's in that region is probably going to get hurricane conditions, but many will. Probably the majority will. The majority of these counties will. And then as we get further inland, you see kind of going to central part. It goes from Highlands to Marion, and then Okeechobee to Putnam, St. Lucie up to St. John's. So again, we're talking about some of our local counties under this hurricane warning. We have, it looks like there, 5 of our 62 local counties under the hurricane warning. Not as many of our 62 as we had during Helene or Dahlia for that matter, but still noteworthy. It's not though expected to make landfall in our area, so that does help us out here some for most of our region. I know Tallahassee, Albany, you guys don't have to worry about this storm really in toward those communities. So that's good news. We do want to kind of put that out there because, with Helene, pretty much, 95% of our area had to worry about that one to some degree, but Tallahassee, Albany, some of those other areas don't have to worry about this one. So that's some good news for you guys after what we've seen, with, the threat that was so severe looking toward Tallahassee with Helene. It didn't quite verify, but it's still impactful. A lot of power outages. Albany really didn't verify that much with the power outages. But areas to the east, I mean, we're talking about some of the areas in Georgia that aren't going to get it, near that with this. Still in the dark there around Coffee County, and I'm going to try to get into that more here in a little bit. But again, hurricane warning. You see St. Lucie County on the east coast all the way to St. John's. Let me go on over here. So that's Port St. Lucie under the hurricane warning. Vero Beach, Sebastian, Palm Bay, Rockledge, Titusville, Deltona. I know the land's in there. Daytona Beach, Palm Coast, St. Augustine. And then you see here as we get on over, we're talking about Palatka, of course, and Ocala, and the villages there, and Dunellen, and Bronson, and Cedar Key, and Homosassa Springs, Brooksville, Dade City, Zephyr Hills, Lakeland. I mean, you see Orlando and Kissimmee in there, St. Cloud, Bartow, Fort Meade, Tampa, Clearwater, St. Petersburg, Wauchula, Sebring, Lake Placid, Arcadia, Sarasota. If I didn't mention you in Bradenton, you guys obviously in it, you could get some of the worst. Punta Gorda, Cape Coral, Bonita Springs, So just kind of running that down for you guys there on that map here, trying to give you guys the very latest information to protect you, your friends, and your family. I know a lot of folks have evacuated as they're trying to take a refuge here from this hurricane. The roads have been very busy around I-75 has been packed. I mean, we're speaking of Marion County, and let me go ahead and try to go ahead and pull up the Florida 511 camera in that area, one of those cameras, to try to tell that weather story here in terms of what the weather that's expected to come is causing there on the area roads. So again, let's kind of try to get that. I know we have that imagery there, so let me go ahead and kind of hone in on that right now as we're looking at the situation. Just try to give you some perspective from that area. It's looking pretty backed up right now as we're looking northbound. Not maybe as bad as it's been at points, as a lot of folks have already kind of moved along, but definitely, just definitely a nasty situation here. As I know the camera's skipping around a little, but I'm gonna pull it up here anyway. You can see I-75 northbound mile marker 357.7. That Florida 501 perspective as folks are getting out of the area at gravest danger there as we're looking at things. And they're running from the water, in many cases there, as they should. You need to hide from the wind. As we're looking at things here. So that's one camera perspective. I don't want to keep that on too long because it's kind of skipping around as we're looking, but I saw that was pretty busy. I was going to go to another one, but it wasn't quite as busy there as I was looking at things. Let me kind of go down and see what mile marker 354 is showing there. As I kind of look, I know I had that one up here a little while ago into toward that region as we're getting closer into toward Ocala itself. As we continue to monitor the situation, let's go ahead and it's not quite as busy here, but it's still showing some cars on the road, vehicles on the road there, headed north more than south, obviously, trying to get out of the area that is at most risk here from Milton. Very, very dangerous Hurricane Milton. You can just see all those vehicles down on the road. A lot of folks trying to go into Georgia on 75. It seems to be more congested that way. Maybe you might be better off going west on I-10 instead. I know some of the areas, if you get off the interstate, are still, Helene impacted, but if you go to Tallahassee and west, you'll be in a spot where you should be all right there in terms of the impacts from Milton. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking, in terms of just wanting to get away maybe. Now technically, again, you do just need to run from the water. So if you're in a storm surge evacuation zone, you don't have to go that far here, really. It's just a lot of folks, I mean, if you're evacuating already, you have the time off, you might just want to get out of the bad weather to enjoy things, take a little mini vacation. So that's why a lot of folks are doing stuff like this, I would think. And I just want to get you guys the best weather conditions there. But as we go ahead and just continue to keep an eye on things here, again, the hurricane warning effect, and we're really concerned about that corridor and, west central, maybe even southwest Florida to some degree, and across to central Florida. So let me go ahead and kind of show you things here. I know maybe making landfall down somewhere in here, give or take, as we're looking at things. It could be even a little bit further south, we'll see, but as we're looking, I know you see inland counties like Polk, Osceola, Orange, Brevard, Indian River, or I know you see Highlands, Okeechobee, Tangaloosey. A lot of concern here for power outages as we get further inland from the coast. Don't want to leave out some of the areas that were hit pretty hard in some past storms like Hardy and DeSoto as well here. So just keep that in mind as we're looking at things. Just trying to give you guys the very latest. Let me go ahead and get back on over here right now toward the graphics. So again, at 7 o'clock Central update, and it's Central because the center's in the Central time zone, and that's why these times on here are also Central. But you see, we have 165 mile an hour max sustained wind expected there at about, the current time per se. That's what we're seemingly seeing. But as we get later on in the timeline, 125 miles an hour will be the predicted wind there at 2 a.m. Eastern time on that Thursday as the center approaches the coast. It could wobble anywhere in that cone of concern. So if it made landfall on the northern side of this, that's where you have problems, for Tampa, and it's going to probably be a $1 billion disaster anyway, but you add billions of dollars to it if it goes just north Tampa, because then all that surge comes right up to Tampa Bay and causes devastation to so many areas there that are very, very highly and densely populated. And if you go a little further south, there's still a lot of population, not as much, but still a lot of population to be damaged. Some portion of the West Florida coast, we already had with Helene a couple weeks ago, further up, but now some portion further down is going to be completely devastated, with homes just completely, in some cases, wiped out tomorrow night. So that's why it's so important to follow those evacuation orders here. You gotta do it if you're in those storm surge areas. I mean, it's so important to do that. You can see here the hurricane expected to go back out over the Atlantic there, get around Cape Canaveral, give or take. That wind, that's at 2 p.m. on Thursday, so slow down some. I know we were thinking earlier on in the time maybe more Wednesday. There's going to be some impacts later on Wednesday that are going to really be deteriorating, but Thursday is when we're really, in the AM hours is when we're going to have some of the worst of Milton, and the power outage numbers are just going to, really, really escalate here. I mean, we're going to have a tornado threat here later on Wednesday, Central and South Florida, though, especially because of the way this is moving here. They're going to be in more favorable quadrants. We're talking about more instability down there. We have some cooler air trying to come in from the north. But as we go ahead and look, also, you see the tropical storm warnings very stark there. Gainesville, Perry, you're under tropical storm warning. Not near as bad expected up there, obviously, as Helene. Nothing like Helene or Idalia for Perry, but still, tropical storm warning could blow some of that debris around from Helene there. You see hurricane watch for Jacksonville. In the pink stripes there, and then we have a tropical storm watch toward Georgia, tropical storm warning for some of that coast there. And then again, that red is a hurricane warning. I do see that hurricane watch and play down south of that too. That could be something that starts getting upgraded to hurricane warnings here as we look pretty soon if things, those trends continue, because you can already tell. I know there's going to be more, tilted to the north with some of this, but we are going to still have, some wind on the south side here, and that tornado threat earlier on that didn't apply to a hurricane warning. But my point being is that wind on that south side is still going to be pretty strong, so I would not be surprised to see some of these go to hurricane warning down here. Be more likely than as we look further on up toward the north for Duval, Clay, that area to go to hurricane warning. I would think it'd be those counties here further down in north southwest Florida that would go to hurricane warning here, and maybe even a little bit on the East Coast. Probably not down to West Palm, but maybe a little bit, on the East Coast there as well. Could even get Lake Okeechobee in that hurricane warning there, and the hurricane watch too. As you can tell on this map with those pink stripes, the blue tropical storm warning and play. But as we go ahead and look now, that scale Cat 5 is catastrophic damage right now, but still, and this is just a wind aspect. Of course, the surge aspect would probably be, even if it's a 3 or a 4 at landfall, that surge aspect here will probably be about a category higher of whatever it is because it's already been built up. So if we have a 3 hidden, the surge would be more like probably what you'd get in a Cat 4, give or take. And then if you have like a Cat 4, the surge would be closer to what you'd have in a Category 5 because it's been so strong for so long here at this point, building that surge up there in the Gulf of Mexico. And we got to watch the high tide cycles too. But again, could be, one of the worst catastrophes in the history of the state of Florida here. Very, very, very serious. Again, you must, heed those evacuation orders there in toward, the western part of the Florida Peninsula. So as we go ahead and say here, Leslie's also out there, but Milton's our focal point here, our focus, the extreme level of concern with that. Hurricane season still running for another month and a half, but I'm really hoping, not out of the question we get something else later on this month, but really hoping this is it for us, but not completely out of the question. There's some stuff in the models we'll have to watch maybe later on, but nothing definitive or definitive. Even I told you guys about a week, there and a half, 2 weeks ago when we were doing our Helene coverage, There might be something after Helene. You have to watch out for it. Kind of the trends had faded and then they ramped up, and now look what we have a Cat 5. Not quite as concerned as I was last time, but it's a possibility. As we go ahead and look here, coastal storm surge threat. You can see here as we look towards some of our local coasts. Let's start with some of the lower numbers. Just 1 to 3 feet there, Indian Pass, Swanee River. Not too big of a deal over that way. But now some of these numbers further down may not get this high because this kind of takes into consideration some ships are track. But Swanee River to Yankeetown, we're talking about 2 to 4 feet of storm surge, and south of Yankeetown 3 to 5. So really, on the west coast in our area, 2 to 4. There's damage. So that's gonna, maybe make things a little worse if we get to that. We may not even get to that, but if we do, the wind direction wouldn't necessarily favor us getting too high anyway. But if we did get to that, could cause issues. But that 3 to 5 is a lot more likely to verify here as we look here on the east coast. So as we're looking at things, that wind is going to be pushing back in as we look later on. As you have that storm moving across, you're going to have that wind pushing back in here and causing some problems. So this could be a storm surge for areas like St. Augustine and areas, around Flagler Beach, similar to Nicole and Ian, give or take. And in some spots, it could be, even similar to Matthew. And as we're looking to St. John's River, maybe not quite as bad as Irma there, but as we look, still 2 to 4 feet above ground is a possibility. So if we got more rain there, and if the center was a little closer, that's really would be a little more concerned, because there's a chance if this goes a little further south, these numbers don't get quite as high further on up here. But we shall see with that. As you look, though, the catastrophic situation here, from, especially the Antclaw River to Inglewood, as we're expecting this widespread devastation. But again, that assumes we saw this, with Helene, areas to the west didn't get the surge where it made landfall. So areas in this case to the north of where it makes landfall really won't get the surge. So, if it makes landfall, and I want to make sure I'm looking at this right before I point it out. Let's just say the Antclaw River area. So that means, just near that and to the south, we're going to have the worst of the surge. So not too far, as we look here in the geography. To the north, we're not going to have that storm surge that much, but near into the south is just going to be absolutely catastrophic. We're talking about homes washed away. We're talking about 10 to 15 feet here, folks. This is a Category 5 hurricane that we're talking about right now, and that surge, maybe not quite to that level when it hits, but it's going to be close. And 10 to 15 feet, I mean, that is extremely, extremely high. And we got to be careful around Inglewood to Bonita Beach. We've seen it with storms like Charlie and with the Ian that deviated from course here and became more of an issue further down the coast. So we got to be kind of careful here. We got to be kind of careful because I know this one here would be a little less likely to deviate a lot, in the last second, because the angle it's taken is more favorable to go, like what the 1921 hurricane did there and hit Tampa, more from the west. It'd be harder for this storm to kind of go in for the south. That's already headed that direction, but we've seen it before, so be very aware here that things could rapidly change, and we might have to up these numbers further south here on the coastline. So, you see Charlotte Harbor 8 to 12 feet. You see the Bonita Beach from Inglewood 8 to 12. That could end up going 10 to 15. That could, if this really shifts, let's say it makes landfall just north of Inglewood, you're going to have the worst surge, from just north of Inglewood all the way through maybe Bonita Beach. So, and you won't get too much around Tampa Bay. So I know it's a very tricky situation, but you got to just evacuate. If you're in an area where we're expecting, any of those areas there, really, as we're looking, that are under those evacuation orders, because it's just too tricky to turn. Some of these areas, you have the local variability a little. So as we look, let's just say here, if you have at least that 3 to 5 feet expectation, it's really advisable for you to evacuate here, because I want to make sure we're not evacuating people on our west coast here unless the orders are in play, really. based on the local geography because you guys have already went through so much, and it would look like that worst would not be impacting Levy County and Dixie as you're doing your rebuilding process there and the like. But on the East Coast, it's a different story, and there are mandatory evacuations in play for counties like St. John's for some of those zones that are most vulnerable from the surge. I mean, you think of neighborhoods like Davis Shores. You could have some big problems here with this surge. This could be, again, pretty significant. I mean, 3 to 5 feet. That's when you start talking about, that can be deadly. I mean, you could drown in that. Technically, just 6 inches of flowing water can knock you down. But when you're talking about, 3 to 5 feet or more, that's when you really need to evacuate. You can't take any chances here with this as we're looking at the situation because then you start to really put yourselves in harm's way. Things can shift around here. So you just got to make sure you take that into consideration. This danger is very real and you need to evacuate. As we go ahead and show you this devastation after Hurricane Michael at Mexico Beach. That was, something where the damage here could look like this. It could be around Tampa Bay, where you have buildings just completely washed away, or it could be Sarasota, or it could be both to some degree. If it makes landfall right at Tampa, you get that surge down to Sarasota to a lesser, but still pretty significant potentially degree here based on how far that stretches down to the south. But as you look here, ironically, Milton replaced Michael on the list, and it could hit on that 6th-year anniversary, and then Milton's probably going to get replaced by another M name. And M names, not quite as, are really scary in terms of the history as I names, but it's getting up there. I mean, we have Matthew, we've had Milton, Michael, I know Mitch years ago as well, and the Atlantic Basin was a big, big name in history. So just please evacuate, though. Very, very serious. This is a graphic on understanding that storm surge. I know as we're looking at things, you can see 12 plus feet expected in some areas. We just did this a couple weeks ago with Helene, and we're talking about homes again in Florida being wiped away here because of storm surge. I know Helene actually ended up being a lot more deadly in the Carolinas, and especially North Carolina, which we'll get to in a moment. But there's a lot more population here on these coastlines. So there's probably going to be more stubborn people that aren't going to evacuate. Granted, Helene had deadly consequences too in areas like Pinellas County, so that might help some folks want to evacuate since we're expecting it to be maybe twice as bad potentially in some of these areas, or worse if you didn't get as much during Helene. But some of the areas that got it pretty bad on the west coast, around Pinellas and the lake, it could be twice as bad. We already had people drown in Helene, and this could be twice as bad. So you really got to be careful. We had a lot of folks that sadly somehow didn't get the message or something in that regard, something in that realm there in Hurricane Ian, and they passed away in Southwest Florida. I mean, the death toll, for a storm surge event that was forecasted, far in advance. Granted, we had that track shift. It's really sad to see. I mean, nothing like what we had in the mountains with Helene, but of course with Helene storm surge, we didn't have any, as I've seen so far, any fatalities in Taylor County this time. I know Adalia last year might have kind of sadly been an eye-opener that, with this being worse, they had to get out. Dixie, Taylor County coast areas there. I believe we had one fatality in Dixie, but that was one that was around Old Town, I want to say. So as I do that off the top of my head, so it's a situation here where, as you're looking at things, that wasn't a storm surge fatality either. But, there's a lot more people here. There's going to be folks that, just like in the last storm, they might try to stick around. And in some of these areas, that might be just a horrible idea. Other areas, you might be okay. You might have bad wind, rain. You don't really get a surge, at the coast. But other areas, your life will be in danger. This is going to be hitting in the middle of the night. Ian actually hit during the day. This will be at night here. And the first responders, if you call in, they're going to say they can't get to you. And then you could drown, you could be electrocuted. Just not a good situation at all. Obviously, just absolutely terrifying as we look here at the information. This is a graphic I have to try to break down what the greatest storm surge risk here could be along the coastal areas with more of a northerly track here. At this point is what I would call it based on the latest information. And some of these maps, we could split the difference between them. I have a few different ones in here, I think 4. I ended up, I had 3 and I had to put a 4th one in there because I saw some, hints at maybe a further south shift, and we're going to have stuff from, landfall south, that point, give or take, south, with the, really bad surge factors. So let's just say here, we have a storm, let's say it makes landfall, pretty far to the north. It hits around Clearwater and goes, up like this somehow. Then you're going to have all sorts of, just horrible devastation. I mean, you're going to have the eye of the hurricane for one, but the big reason I'm showing this to you is you're going to have that surge just pushing in and, just wiping things out here left and right, to be quite honest. There's just so much population. You'll have just devastation there, in these areas. Now, the way the bay is, I mean, that water is just going to come on in here, and, you're just going to see, Tampa, Riverview, portions there, and or St. Petersburg. I mean, of course, Largo. You're going to have this, just a terrible situation. Other communities in there as well. It's just going to be awful. Now, as we get south, let's say the storm hits, instead closer to Anna Maria Island, give or take. So it's going to be from there, maybe, right at that point, if you give or take a little bit, but then mainly to the south, you're going to have the devastation. So that means areas, like Holmes Beach, there, those areas around Longboat Key, they're just going to be, in a horrible situation. Even the surge getting on in there to some degree, and towards some of the communities, like Bradenton and, even Sarasota, going to have problems. Of course, if it makes landfall, let's say it makes landfall, further down here, then you're going to have, so many problems here, and even some on our next screen. So, as we look, so let's say then, I mean, you can have problems on the north side of this, especially, but even down the coast a good bit. But then, let's say instead it makes landfall around Gulf Gate Estates. So in that case, then you'd have all the storm surge here from around there all the way to the south. You'd have devastation in Venice. You'd have devastation probably in Inglewood as well, all up and down that coastline there. So this is really important to keep in mind. It could go even further off the screen pretty bad too. You even have some issues down toward Port Charlotte and Punta Gorda, I would think. And then let's say it goes even further south here. It makes landfall instead around Rotunda. Then you're going to have that storm surge from near and south of that, where it's just, terrible. It's not like, our storm there a couple weeks ago, Helene, where everybody kind of got it. Now, they were from there in the south, pretty big ways, but it's not going to be the whole coastline that gets this terrible, and it's going to be, worse than what we had by a wide margin in Helene for a area, small or not small, but, it's not small stretch of the coast in Helene. But the area that gets it is just going to probably be pretty much wiped out here. That's what we're talking about. You're going to drown more than likely in one of these areas, one of these, map areas, give or take. If you don't evacuate and it hits, in one of these spots, and you're just, near that or to the south. So, okay, so let's say it hits around the Rotunda. We're talking about, just terrible devastation there, Charlotte Park area per se, and then, as we're looking here, see Cape Coral, you see Captiva, you're going to just have areas, even down to Bonita Springs, Bonita Beach, you're going to have big, big problems areas. Some of these will be just completely wiped out. San Carlos Park, Saddlewood. So that's what we're seeing here. I mean, even the water probably going to Fort Myers Shores. I don't know the exact details on some of this and how, these areas are more vulnerable, but just kind of looking at this here, that's what I would kind of think. I mean, of course, Ian made landfall here as we're getting more toward Fort Myers Beach, and it was from there to the south. So these areas are a little north. I mean, if it really shifts and makes landfall, let's say around Captiva, then we start having more problems further south off this map even. So again, just trying to break that down for you guys, the viewers at home. Again, a very, very serious situation, and you got to keep these evacuation orders Let me see if there's any questions or comments here. I know it can be a little confusing when we're going over stuff like this with the surge. It's an unusual angle again for the coast out there too. So that's why I wanted to show this, because this is going to be this horrific storm surge, but it's not going to be for everybody. It's going to be from near where the center hits and to the south, where we're going to see homes completely wiped away here. So I want to make sure I'm breaking that down very carefully in that regard. So I do see there are some comments here. Let's see, John, and he watches a lot. He's evacuated there from Pinellas County last night. Definitely, you want to rather be safe than sorry in these type of situations. It looks like Andy watching. They're praying for their friends down in Sarasota, and they're really thanking me there for my hard work. I appreciate you guys watching there. Just try to do the best I can to protect you, your friends, and your family here as we, watch a very difficult situation here. We're live right now on all the different platforms of Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch, and we should have the new 11 o'clock update out here in just a little bit. We'll see, depending on, how early that comes in. We may be able to get that to you live here on this update. But as we go ahead and kind of go further in here now, so the Tampa Bay area, if this makes landfall around Tampa Bay, and then you're having, and when I say around, I mean, near or north of Tampa Bay, really, then you're going to have the worst storm surge in living memory, 103 years since that 1921 hurricane there. We're talking, anyway, the late Wednesday, early Thursday time frame is going to be the worst of the weather. 85 mile an hour to 105 miles an hour is the max sustained wind forecast I'm going with right now. It got to 125. It is slightly lower than what I had here yesterday and a little bit in the day before, because I think it may make landfall a little south, but this could adjust again. Still could have big problems nonetheless. I mean, this is south, could be Sarasota. It gets really some of the worst of the winds. Those gusts, could be closer to like 140 or something in that realm. But just kind of broad brushing that a little, but it's just kind of how you have to do storm surge to some degree. But extended power outages here, expected. And we're talking about rainfall, 5 to 9 inches. I had to go up on this based on how the models are handling things. Maybe a little more organization, especially when it makes landfall a little further south. Versus it kind of spreading out rain further up. It will quite a bit, but maybe not quite as far away here in areas like Tampa. If it makes landfall to the south, sure, you get that, that storm surge is a lot less than 10 to 15 feet. You really don't get it too much. If it makes landfall, 20 miles south or something like that. You're not going to really have that surge factor. And that's, the greatest news of all, to be quite honest, because you're not going to have this whole areas and neighborhoods wiped away. But you're still going to have pretty significant damage, in some of these areas from the wind and the rainfall here. It's still going to be a pretty big event, power outage problems, flooding there in the urban spots. But again, the surge is what will just, granted, unless we have like this become a Cat 5 and somehow make landfall to south of Tampa. I say become, it is a Cat 5, but my point being is that maybe, it'd probably have to, fall off a little and then re-strengthen into that. And we're not expecting that, but unless we get like those sustained winds of 150, 160 or something, then that's when you start talking about more building devastation just from the wind, based on the building codes and the like, especially in the coast. Inland, it's not going to take quite as much here for the wind sometimes, because you're not used to winds this strong, in terms of even the building codes not being able to handle those quite as well further inland if those kind of sustain themselves enough. And trees and power lines and stuff like that too will cause big problems. So again, I just look into this here. I know northern track would cause devastation. Isolated tornadoes possible too. Got to remain alert here for these rapidly changing weather conditions. So as we go ahead and look at Orlando, and this is an area we got to really be careful with, because this is a spot there. Tampa's gotten fairly lucky. Orlando hadn't really seen an impact here, that could be, to this degree with 95 mile an hour gusts since 2004 and Hurricane Charlie. And it could even exceed what they had in Hurricane Charlie. I know that kind of made that beeline to them for Punta Gorda at the last minute. Now, if this makes landfall at Punta Gorda, this storm would probably go a little south because of the angle it's taken. But the point is, I made that beeline and folks were caught off guard. We don't need to be caught off guard this time. Charge your devices up. I know Tampa, it's a spot here that they're not as, maybe prone to the wind problem because they know that they have to be expecting that more being right on the coast there to some degree. I mean, the surge is something that's really hard to prepare for. But Orlando, all those trees, and power lines, even power poles, you're gonna have some of those falling, these type of winds more than likely. You're talking about trees falling on homes, vehicles, and roads. Of course, that'll happen to the west too. I mean, you think about areas like Lakeland, and it could be even a little worse to the west. It's just there's a lot of population in here. Orlando, Kissimmee to St. Cloud, and this is a spot that hadn't had something like this in 20 years. It could be, really, really, really substantial. I know we've had Irma to some degree there, but this would be worse wind than that, and this could be a really big deal with widespread and extended power outages. I mean, to the west, it's going to be like that, but I know more folks have evacuated from there. Now, over here, you're maybe not evacuating. Maybe mobile homes are, something like that, but, some folks actually evacuated over here to get away from the water, the surge, which, is obviously the right thing to do here to some degree because that's the most dangerous thing with the mandatory evacuations. But you could still be facing a life or death situation even around Orlando and Kissimmee and St. Cloud here tomorrow night. I'm very serious, about how concerned I am here with this threat. So I mean, it's not something you can take lightly as we're looking here toward these areas. I mean, you even have to think about some of these other areas around there. I mean, yeah, let's get over to our map real quick and just talk about what we could be dealing with. I mean, let's just kind of, I know it could be a little northerly tilted in some ways. The severe threat, maybe, in some ways, had ahead might be a little one further south tilted to a degree. But as we look here at things, I know of course, we're talking more about the wind threat. And we have this huge area of the Florida Peninsula under hurricane warning. Let's just say it makes landfall. Let's say it makes landfall in Manatee County here. So let's say it makes landfall around Bradenton. And I mean, let's see where they had it on the last track update, exactly where they kind of had it coming across. And that's about where they had it. It might have had a northern Sarasota, give or take. I don't have it where I can pull up the line exactly. But the point being here, we'll just say it makes landfall kind of around there. So in the Wardat area. Let's pick Longboat Key actually, because then you wouldn't maybe have that surge factor really coming up into Tampa Bay probably as much. Bradenton, you're kind of cutting it closer because the way things are in there, you might have some big problems down in here or something like that, based on the wind direction wrapping around. I mean, so, that's something you got to take into consideration. That's what we see near and south because it's a little north because the way that some of this is. I mean, if you have it make landfall right in here, sir, you're not going to get a surge maybe up in here. It's really tricky, so you got to make sure you're following the evacuation orders. But it would seem you could have some of that wrap back up in there to some degree because of the way this is. It's hard to point out on here, but, some of that surge is wrapping in there really bad. But you could have some of that wrap back up in there a little bit too. So as we're looking at things, but it'd be more down the coast here. But then if it goes in around there, so you have all these inland areas that are just gonna have trees down everywhere. I mean, it could be a little more broad. So let me zoom out there even more. I mean, you see Lakeland, Arcadia. I mean, you see Kissimmee, you see Sebring. I mean, and you have areas further over, Rockledge, Vero Beach. And then, Dade City, Brooksville, Orlando. You kind of get the idea here. We could have, some big problems in terms of that wind here. And there's a chance, even if the wind doesn't come up quite as much here, in like maybe, northern Lake County or Sumter, then you get to have a big, strip of very heavy rain. That's what the models have been kind of saying here to some degree, but there still could be, way enough wind to cause widespread power outages. So keep that in mind as we're looking at things here, as we're kind of looking at the situation. So, got to be very careful when you're under hurricane warning. As again, gonna have big problems where many trees are falling homes, vehicles, and roads. We're talking about, a situation here where, really, I mean, as you're tracking things, that could happen over a, number of counties there under that hurricane warning. I mean, That's something every county under the hurricane warning has to be on the lookout for. It's just there will be a concentrated area where it's worse. So keep that in mind too. Okay, so let's get local on some of these impacts out of our 62 counties in St. Augustine and St. Johns County. That area late Wednesday into Thursday p.m. is when we're expecting the worst weather. Isolated tornadoes possible too. Wind there where power outages will be likely, gusts to 75 miles an hour, a possibility. That rainfall, that's a high risk too because the urban areas, 5 to 9 inches, isolated 12. St. Augustine already floods anyway, with not too much rain in a lot of cases, and the storms are added on top of that. That's, a big problem where 3 to 5 feet above ground could occur. Not, catastrophic, but it's more likely this would occur, even if it's not going to be nearly as bad as the West Coast. Some of that West Coast won't, but this side up there, it's not going to go further up, so it's probably going to happen here. And evacuations have have been ordered there as we're looking at things, as we're tracking the scenario there, and then up toward Stark, where I'm at here in Bradford County. It's a situation the late Wednesday and the early Thursday p.m. time frame is when we're going to have the worst. Stay tuned for more updates, but I have knocked the wind number down a little on gusts. From yesterday, isolated rain total, I've knocked just a little down here as well. And the tornado threat, I've knocked down just a little. It's still going to be serious. Don't get me wrong here. We'll still have some folks that lose power. I know we had, I think, about 80%, give or take, lose power in Helene at one point around Stark. Don't think it'd be that high. I mean, the gust numbers are likely a little higher. We didn't have measurements everywhere, but, so the wind threat was worse with Helene than this one will be. It looks like at this point, unless something really shifts around on us, but still power lines could fall, and I would say probably like 40-50% could be without power this time instead of 80%, in the county, give or take. It's hard to say that too much ahead of time. Maybe only like 30% of, we get that tracks just sit a little bit further down, but, still some folks are going to lose power, so it's important to charge your devices. So rainfall, I know there's a medium risk here. I lowered that kind of because, I don't know if we're going to get this. There's a chance we could have to up those. It's a situation right now where 3 to 6 isolated 8. Here, as we're looking at this, it could be a scenario really where it's not quite, as bad as Debbie's rains here. About 7 inches, I believe it was, in Debbie. This year's Debbie, way more than other Debbie in 2012. But as we're looking here, isolated tornadoes, they're a threat, but it's looking like our parameters here in Stark would make those a lot less likely than you would see and what we've seen in Debbie and Helene with the, warnings popping up. It would be less likely there around, where we're at in Bradford County. Not completely a zero chance, but it kind of reminds me more of, that threat we were in with, like, I believe it was Hurricane Ian there back in 2022. We kind of were, we were in a less favorable slot for that. It was cool, pretty cool that late September, period. And we're going to get cool air coming in, which I'm going to talk about here. So I don't think the tornado threat would really be able to come to fruition, but we'll watch it. There'll be some tornado watches in play. It might be for like Marion and Levy, close to where that hurricane warning area is, so Flagler, St. John's, Putnam, as well, as we're kind of looking at things here in the situation. But as we're looking at things, as we're just kind of tracking the situation here, again, that kind of breaks that down for you guys. So, the rainfall is still pretty significant because we have the saturated ground. It could cause flooding, utilize the sandbags as necessary. But again, less probably than Debbie, unless we get, the high end of this. And then the wind here, slightly less than Helene. Maybe not by much. Same with the rain, maybe not by much. And, combined, that could still be pretty formidable in terms of causing some problems here. Because, with Helene, we didn't have that much rain. We had a lot of wind. With Debbie, we had less wind, than what this will probably provide. And we had, more rain. So, kind of interesting. The balance there is kind of an in-between almost. Again, Debbie, for Stark, it was a lot of rain, a little less wind. Helene was a lot more wind and less rain, and this could be a good bit of rain, a good bit of wind, but not, to the highs in either one. As we go ahead and look now, that's that graphic here talked about some of those preparedness considerations, and they don't have too much time now, but just again, if you have any more time, you may have a little bit there as we're looking. I know conditions will deteriorate tomorrow further down the state, maybe a little earlier out ahead because when a tornado threat is starting to develop, in the afternoon, maybe in South and Central Florida. But you just want to try to clean up that Helene debris ahead of Milton. I know we're going to have a local inland flood risk to some degree. Granted, that inland flood risk may be, Marion and Putnam, and then off to the coast here at this point. And then inland may mean, I didn't update this from the other day, but inland might mean more Central Florida, with it being a bigger problem toward like Orlando. But in our area, Marion and Putnam could definitely have that problem. There are flood watches in play, so be careful in that regard. You want to secure property if needed. You need to evacuate very soon if the roads are congested in some spots. As I said, your time is running out here in those storm surge vulnerable areas to evacuate. You got to follow those orders in terms of that surge, because you got to run from the water, you hide from the wind, and unless you're in a mobile home, and then you might need to find a safer structure to ride out, or if you have a tree that you're afraid of that's going to fall on your roof, because that can be deadly, then you might want to go to an emergency shelter or something like that. From that factor in terms of the wind. And, extreme wind warnings could be issued toward that West Coast, Tampa, Sarasota, or somewhere in between, north-south, based on where we have that eye wall come ashore. And could track a little inland with those as well, but probably not as far as with the extreme wind warnings as Helene, unless this really stays stronger, because it is moving about half the speed when it hits the state as Helene did. Moving pretty, more commonly in terms of that speed. Helene was just racing on through, and that's why we had so much wind so far up there, in the Georgia and the like, where there's still power outages. In fact, let's go ahead and say Georgia then on that note, on our power outage map here. Let me go ahead and say that, because we still have power outages in our area from Helene. As we're looking here, as I see the comments here, I know some folks, want to just remind everybody to stay safe. Yeah, stay safe out there for sure, because, sadly, we're probably going to have some folks that get injured in this storm, and there's almost certainly going to be fatalities. We really want to mitigate that threat here. That's why we're warning you guys out ahead now of this, very significant danger for portions of the state of Florida here. And be careful on the road, because, people evacuating or people preparing before or after that can be considered, Milton hurricane death as well. As we go ahead and look here at our Georgia power outage map again, these are outages here, pretty much, for the most part, these would be from Helene, which hit, as we're looking 12 days ago at about this time. So these outages from, just maybe a little less than 12 days ago. I popped this one up behind me. I mean, this is Power.us, and we're talking about, you saw over 40,000 customers in the state still in the dark. And, a lot of the counties doing a lot better in our area for sure. But we still have about 3,500 customers out in Lowndes County, where Valdosta is. Berrien County, almost 1,000 customers in the dark. Atkinson County, about half the county. You guys there in the dark. And then Coffee County, where Douglas is, we're talking about over half the customers still without electricity in parts of our 62 counties from Helene. I mean, it's really taken a while for the power to come back on in some of these spots. More reminiscent of Michael in the inland counties 2 weeks later was 50%. I know in Florida, we pretty much had the power back on for maybe a week or so for pretty much everybody at this point. But as we go ahead and look here, you see Ware County a little less than 2,000, Pierce County over 1,000, and then we get out of our area, you see Bacon County, Jeff Davis, Applin, Wayne, Toombs, Emmanuel, Johnson, getting closer to Augusta, Jefferson, Burke. You see Richmond, you see Columbia, you see McDuffie, and you see Warren. So quite a few outages up that way here. I mean, let's go ahead and pull up the Florida map here, and I know they may have a few because of the, the storminess, but yeah, overall, I mean, this is what it looks like. It's been looking pretty much like this for days here. 1,482 customers in the dark here. 123 in Hamilton, and may still be because of Helene. 5 in Swanee. You have Taylor, where it made landfall, no customers in the dark. As you see here, Dixie County, 9 in the dark. Lafayette County, 1. As we're looking at things, none in Jefferson, none in Madison. You see a few down there because probably just some of that rainy weather, stuff like that. But overall, not very many in the dark here in the state of Florida. And honestly, things have been kind of, at this point, granted, there's going to be so many, so it's going to take longer. But, these lesser popular areas, things have been kind of, practice so much now, they have maybe a quicker handle now to get the power back on. Another thing as I look at this, for you that haven't left, but you're going to leave your homes, make sure, especially if you're leaving because of storm surge threat or any type of flood threat, really, you want to make sure you turn that power off so you don't have that house catch on fire here when that water potentially intrudes in. So again, just wanted to break this down. Let me go to North and South Carolina real quick, because North Carolina still has, or I'll just go to North. I don't think South had enough to really pop up, but you see Transylvania, 1,500 customers still in the dark. Some of these counties, though, like Buncombe County, where Aspen is, I mean, some of these homes are just gone. So it's more of a situation about they just can't necessarily hook the power off because there's nothing to hook it to. But 49,000 customers still in the dark, give or take. Because again, some of those are going to be you don't have the homes anymore. But McDowell County over 4,000, Rutherford County over 3,500, Yancey they're over 5,000. Some of these are areas outside of Asheville where you got hit hard where the homes are wiped away too, maybe even worse in some cases. You see Mitchell County over 6,000 customers, Avery County, you see Watauga, and Ashe County there. So again, just trying to give you the latest in that regard. Let's get back on over toward the graphics right now. Again, this is a very important graphic, so let's make sure we're, giving it, credence here as we're looking at things, as we're tracking the situation. I mean, again, you just got to clean up that debris, that from Helene out ahead of Milton. That surge coming in. I know there's electrical vehicles. You could have fires from those because of that saltwater intrusion. So make sure you're not leaving those in those areas that are vulnerable from storm surge. It seems to have been an issue during Helene to some extent. I know basic disaster supplies kits, we transition over to that. That includes water, non-perishable food, battery-powered hand crank radio, no weather radio, flashlight, and first aid kit. And it's also important to have cash and gas. And you have a little more time, in some of the state to get this stuff, even during the night, if some stuff's open, maybe do it during the night if you're further south and you're staying put before things start to deteriorate tomorrow. But you may have some time during the day, but some businesses are closing, pretty early. I know the Walmart here in Stark is closing at noon based on some social media reporting there. So, and it's supposed to reopen at 2 p.m. on that Thursday. So I know other areas that are in a lot more danger are going to probably already be closing stuff down or close. Some airports, I think, even closed today, like toward Tampa. So, some of the areas is almost too late to get this stuff at this point. And you might just have to really evacuate if you're really concerned about your danger here. But as you go ahead and see, you can get a full list ready.gov/kit. Chart up those devices and many power outages are certain. Be ready to move to an interior room in a tornado extreme wind situation. And then after the storm moves through, staying away from power lines and generator safety is critical here. So, that carbon monoxide poisoning in the wake of the hurricane here. So keep that in mind. I know, the down power lines, don't want to get near those. I mean, they could be in water and that could electrocute you, or if you try to touch them, which is not a good idea, they could still be live and they could electrocute you that way. So gotta be very careful here. I mean, I hate to be all gloom and doom, but this stuff happens. It's very serious here as we're looking at things, because a lot of folks die in the aftermath of a storm. They get through it and they let their guard down, and then they have a tragic outcome afterward. I mean, you got to treat those intersections, with the traffic lights out as four-way stops, because that can be a deadly accident. You could have a T-bone accident if you, try to go through that there, and then the other car didn't stop either, and then, it's a problematic outcome. As we go ahead and look now towards some fatalities here back to Helene, because, we don't want to forget about this, and I want to make some points about this too. Once again, according to the latest update there from Twitter/X account, WX fatalities yesterday. I know they had 247 at least dead in the storm. Granted, these are, you got to keep these in mind here that I wanted to separate these out. So I derived that data and put it into medium market breakdowns here. So we're talking about Greenville, Spartanburg, Asheville, Anderson, which is kind of weird to be that many names and cities in one, together like that. But that's the way it is where the TV stations are all in kind of different towns there. But it's a pretty big geographic market, but it's all, like one affiliate's in one town, one's in another. But, a lot of those fatalities closer to Asheville, give or take, and we had 132 folks lose their life there. Just absolutely horrific. As we look toward Augusta, Georgia, 21 people lost their lives. Just an awful situation there. That deviation a little to the east there, and trees falling, a lot of places. We had a lot of tragic outcomes. 20 dead in the Charlotte area, give or take. And I'm waiting for the new update on our storm here. We should be getting that soon on Milton. But then Tampa, St. Petersburg, Sarasota. So we have Milton coming there now. Probably going to have a number this high or worse. I'd be surprised if it wasn't worse. Granted, if you, mitigate out ahead, you can have a fairly low number. I mean, folks are taking the right precautions. I mean, you think of Andrew, and the number wasn't very high considering it was a Cat 5 at landfall at Old Homestead and the like, but it was similar to that, I believe, down in South Florida. I'm trying to remember that off the top of my head. So it's a scenario here where we still had a lot of folks that lose their life in Pinellas County during Hurricane Helene. Macon area, 9 fatalities, a lot in their eastern zones. Columbia, South Carolina, 9 fatalities there. Tri-Cities area, Tennessee, at least 8. I know that's an area that got hit pretty hard. You had a video of the hospital where they had to evacuate, right? With the floodwaters, almost to the roof in that region, but 8 dead there at least. Johnson City in that region, Bristol, Tennessee, in that market there. Savannah, Georgia, 6 fatalities there from Helene. And then as we look toward Jacksonville, Brunswick, getting toward some of our area here, we did have 4 folks lose their life. We had one of those up in southeast Georgia involving a firefighter, and then we had 3 in toward Jacksonville, Duval County itself. And in Tallahassee, Thomasville, where the storm actually hit, we had 3 fatalities. All those were in South Georgia, I believe. We didn't have any in Taylor. Fort Myers, Naples, we had 3, and they're going to be at big risk from Milton coming up. We had 3 in the Knoxville, Tennessee market, 1 in the Albany, Georgia market. There, as we were looking at things, could have been a worse there for sure. Moved a little east, but then also folks were taking, heed of the warnings there to some degree. It was, warned pretty well in that part of the region with hurricane warnings, and in Georgia, you see Atlanta there. No fatalities, which was great news. It deviated to the east, but they still had a blast of emergency. 1 fatality there around Gainesville's market, Dixie County, I believe it was, and then 10 others in, unknown/other markets. So there were a few in some other markets there. We just didn't have any more room in the graphic, and then some that haven't been accounted for where they were exactly yet. In that 247 dead, and again, many missing. We really, really hope we don't have a number anywhere close to that in this, because of, this is something with the storm surge threat and, the geographic area being less. We hope folks are just taking heed here. That was a very unique flood setup there in the mountains, but you could still have numbers, like double, what they have, Tampa, St. Petersburg, Sarasota. They could have a number like that in their market, double that. I mean, I hope it's none, but realistically, it could be something like that. And Fort Myers, Naples number could be pretty high too, and some of these others, Orlando's going to have some probably, sadly. We hate even talking like that in terms of having to predict stuff, in that regard. But, there's just, it's just the sad reality of things. As we did get a new advisory in, so I need to go ahead and touch on that. As, of course, it's still that time where we've had storms like Michael and Matthew and now Milton adding to the list here of a name to be retired. As we have the new advisories, I need to go ahead and jump out of the shot here and give you that latest information. It's just coming in from the National Hurricane Center in Miami. So, that, information is just, very important to kind of touch on here as we go ahead and say here the hurricane in relation to the states of the track. And as I look at that, it has a 4 in the word of Gulf, it looks like here. And then it has as a 1. I mean, they may think it still weakens in between, but it's hard to say. I mean, I would kind of say it wouldn't weaken below a 4 before it hits, unless we really have some, more shear takeover. But we see there sometimes, they're thinking could have that out there as a 4, but they're thinking it's going to be a high end 3. But it's not going to matter that much. So let me step out, get the information as it's just coming in. That information is just coming in here. Just being, uploaded in our system. Hurricane Milton. Okay, it's still a Category 5. They did drop the wind number a little bit, and the pressure's gone up a little, so that's, you know, I mean, it's a Cat 5, but that's positive, barely, but positive news. Milton, though, expected to make landfall on the Gulf Coast of Florida late Wednesday as a dangerous major hurricane, okay? So that 4 icon here, that is talking about 8 p.m. on that Wednesday. It could actually honestly be after midnight. You see that 1 there, that's 8 a.m. on that Thursday. As I zoom in, let me go ahead and take that off. And then as we go ahead and look here, so you see the purples, that's where we're expecting sustained hurricane winds. But it's a continuous thing. Let's just fix the points here. But red is the hurricane gust. I mean, as we look here, you know, you got to kind of think of this area, give or take. You know, we could have some of the worst. You know, maybe even down the coast just a little. It's hard to extrapolate when we're live on the air, but as you see here, 8 a.m., that purple is going to be some of the worst of it, from Lakeland to Sebring to even up there to Kissimmee. It would seem we're getting some of the worst of the winds there with hurricane sustained. Gusts, you know, maybe like 95 miles an hour, give or take. As we're looking, you see areas further up. They're looking a little bit better for, like, you know, our first coast region. You don't see that red circle area really getting into much of our region. Some of them area where hurricane gusts could be possible. I know my graphic in there has it a little bit broader, but, you know, if that trend continues, that'd be good news. That it's just more the tropical storm conditions here that's in that yellow circled zone. But the coastal problems could still arise, and we could still have gusts close to hurricane force right at the coast because of the onshore wind and that storm surge threat being a big deal. So 160-mile-an-hour winds. The center is about 405 miles southwest of Tampa. That pressure's up to 915 millibars, so it's gone up. So it is kind of going through a little bit. Maybe a high well replacement cycle. I didn't, you know, see a whole bunch of, you know, maybe degradation with it. You know, but it may be trying to weaken a little bit there as we're looking, as we're tracking things. And I know, just trying to see if there's been any changes. I know there's some updates in Mexico, but doesn't look like anything maybe here. Let me see what they have for the storm surge numbers still. So they still have, so they have Egmont Key to Boca Grande 10 to 15 feet. Tampa Bay 10 to 15 feet. The St. Cloud River to Egmont Key 9 to 13 feet. Boca Grande there to Bonita Beach 8 to 12 feet. And then Charlotte Harbor 8 to 12 feet. So that might have gone up just a touch there. Let me double check. And that 9 to 13 doesn't, I don't think we had that on there. Let me see. They might have bumped some numbers up a little further south there. I'm just kind of looking here at the latest information as it comes on in from the Hurricane Center of Miami. Just bear with me. And by the way, let me see if that graphic's updated. Okay, that is updated. I wanted to kind of, so the most likely arrival time, we're going to have tornado threat earlier than this, but the most likely arrival time for the tropical storm force winds along the west coast of Florida probably be somewhere like around 7, 8, 9 o'clock there tomorrow night. You know, out ahead, but we're going to have some squally weather. You see that other purple area, that's going to move in first. We could have some severe weather out ahead of the main storm system that, you know, impairs, you know, that preparedness. But as we're kind of looking here, they didn't update the graphic yet, but I think that 9 to 13 might be a foot higher now. So for some of these areas, so 10 to 15 feet now expected from Egmont Key to Boca Grande. 10 to 15 for Tampa Bay, and Cloud River to Egmont Key 9 to 13 feet. Again, I think it's Boca Grande. It could be a different pronunciation, but Boca Grande to Bonita Beach 8 to 12 feet. Charlotte Harbor 8 to 12 feet. So again, just trying to give you the very latest here to protect you, your friends, and your family. Trying to make sure you're staying safe, obviously, in this type of situation here. Just trying to make sure you're up to date. as we get more information coming on in here to the Weather Center. It's a fluid situation. It's the one-man band here as we're watching things with the hurricane. Let me just zoom on in here again. There's your hurricane there, folks. Very vicious looking. Granted, it may have lost just a little bit of intensity, but it's still a Category 5 hurricane. 157, and I'll show you the scale, but so let me pull this up. So 157 parts of the Cat 5, and we're at 160 right now. I know they round a little, but 160 there on that wind number at 11 o'clock Eastern in that update. So that's the new information. I know, since they don't have it right because of the way they do this, you can't see exactly on this, right where they have it making landfall. And again, there's a cone of concern with this, and you got to watch for the wobbles, but I'm kind of trying to connect the dots here a little alive on the air. Maybe a landfall somewhere around here is being projected now, closer to Venice, give or take. So then that could put the worst of the storm surge down in here. Venice, Northport. I mean, they're not right at the coast, but there are some, depending on how that water comes up in there. I know you have to kind of know your local geography. I don't want to, jump on that too much because there may be reasons about how that would work down there. But you see Minnesota Key, Rotunda area, again, Boca Grande, Pineland maybe. We shall see how that storm surge sets up. It could be, trending further south. We've seen that with storms like Charlie and, of course, Ian. And, I mean, you just never know here with this type of situation. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking the scenario, you just got to be really cautious here because, some shifts can really have a big difference. I mean, from near and south of the center, where the big problems will be with the surge. I know it's a little different than some of the other storms in the past because the direction is coming in, but, it's something that, can change everything really as we're looking at this. I mean, people could be in some grave danger here is what I'm trying to say as we're looking at this information. So again, it's all coming in right now. Let me put some other models on here. I mean, they're in pretty good agreement. The hurricane center went just a tad north, it looks like, of the two, the TVCN and the GFS. But the H-warp, looks like they're following that pretty, closely. I mean, as I look, I mean, looks like they think it's going to move just slightly faster, though. But as we go ahead and look at some of that, I'll take it off. Again, just trying to give you the very latest information here to protect you, your friends, your family. I know this storm, is coming in from a different way. That's important for sure, but it's also just, it may be harder for, it to kind of be, pulled further south, in with the land mass here because of it not paralleling the coast. Instead, it's going across, instead of paralleling and then coming in. So we shall see. But again, there are some trends a little south here. I mean, as we're looking at things right now, it's a little hard to do on the fly, but you see it, as it kind of pulls off. I do need to check one more thing before I come back, see if they've changed any of our surge numbers here locally, because that's important. Okay, they're going 3 to 5 still from Sebastian Inlet to Altamaha Sound in Georgia. So that looks the same. St. Johns River still 2 to 4 feet above ground level, expected to peak surge, if they occur at the time of high tide. I know in some of these, we don't have the high tide correlate, with Helene, especially maybe even more so Adalia, it's a factor, where in Adalia it didn't correlate, and that helped. And Helene, I mean, we were pretty close there on Cedar Key, though. So, we didn't get the absolute highest numbers, but it was problematic. So, not everybody's at high tide at the same time, but, that plays a role, obviously. As we go ahead and keep watching, keep tracking. So, hurricane warning there. In effect, west coast from Bonita Beach northward to Swanee River, including Tampa Bay. And the east coast from the St. Lucie Martin County line northward to Ponte Vedra Beach. And a storm surge warning, Florida west coast from Flamingo northward to Swanee River, including Charlotte Harbor and Tampa Bay, and Sebastian Inlet, Florida, the Altamaha Sound, Georgia, including the St. Johns River. So that's just some information here to touch on still. Let me see our West Coast real quick. I want to see what they have. Yeah, the graphic may be updated, but I wanted to see what they have. If they have Yankee Town in here, or some more areas in our viewing circle on the West Coast. Again, it might not matter too much, but I'm just trying to get the latest information there, so we're kind of keeping you guys up to date. Okay, they did upgrade the graphic. Okay, so seeing it visually helps a little bit more. So what they've done here, yeah, from about Swanee River all the way down, south of our area, they have 2 to 4 feet. So that's not really evacuation level surge on the West Coast, unless you're being told to evacuate because of a specific region. That could be in danger, a specific, reason there, because of the vulnerability from Helene. But the numbers have gone up there south of Tampa. They have Tampa Bay 10 to 15, but they have it now Egmont Key, which is really, right on the southern fringes of that, all the way to Boca Grande 10 to 15, and it's 9 to 13 from Egmont to Anclote, which is geographically closer to where Tampa Bay is. They're kind of hedging now. I think it's going to be, south of Tampa where we have some of the worst of the surge here, as we're tracking things, as we're monitoring the situation. So I'm just trying to kind of look at this here still as this progresses. So Egmont Key to Boca Grande. Let's go ahead and zoom in here. So, you're talking about some of these areas here just south of Tampa Bay. I'm not going to zoom in all the way, but that kind of helps you guys out a little. In fact, let me pull up, if we have it in here. Let me go ahead and pull up our graphic here, but maybe it'll be in here a little bit better. I'm trying to do this on the fly. The new advisory comes out. Okay, well, I think that kind of gives you the idea here that we've seen that change, though. That kind of gives the region in general, we're a little more concerned now from Bradenton to Punta Gorda, yes, there. But it's technically Egmont Key to Boca Grande, where we have the greatest danger. But obviously, Tampa Bay, Pacific North, big problems. Let me go ahead and kind of get our graphics back up here and go over some more information. I know, I will say that, with that track, adjustment, this other graphic I'm going to say here is a little bit, it's not 100% there in terms of, everybody north and south fringes, especially the north fringe, probably wouldn't get it. But we have a Cat 5 hurricane, and we got to take, all precautions here, obviously, as we're looking at things, taking the situation seriously. So I'm going to kind of hedge a little bit with this, just to be on the safe side as we're looking at the information. So again, let me go ahead, now that we have that 11 o'clock update, out 160 on the wind, still a Category 5, a Category 5 hurricane, but it was 165 earlier, but again, it's not going to make much of a difference probably as we're looking at things, as we're tracking the situation. Again, we talked about storms like Michael and Matthew and now Milton, catastrophic, hurricane impact, toward portions of Florida here in the month of October. Especially Michael. Matthew maybe used the word more devastating and not as much catastrophic in Florida based on what actually happened, but did get retired. And then Milton, of course, could be more of that catastrophic wording. But as we go ahead and look here, so this is the graphic I was talking about where I kind of went a little north probably on here just to be safe to get St. Augustine in the gust to 75 possibility. But really the greatest danger is going to be, just, to the south of the edges of this on, the north fringe, and then, probably even, on the south fringe to some degree, just the north, but, and then it's going to be a lot worse here in a corridor. Maybe the I-4 corridor, maybe just a little south of the I-4 corridor here where we have, those gusts, over maybe 90, 100 miles an hour, give or take, across the state, a strip of that. Some of that right at the coast, the eye wall, even higher with some extreme wind warnings probably coming in play. But you're really going to treat those like tornado situations. But again, make sure you charge your devices anywhere in this red area. That's where you gotta charge your devices if you're staying put. Even if you're on the northern fringe, maybe it's a gust of 60 knocks your power out, because that's where the criteria technically is for power out is potential is 60. So anybody in this red has to charge their devices or just stay on put, so you don't lose, that method there. You might lose a cell tower signal, but assuming you don't, then you're not too hard hit, but you lose power. You want to make sure you have that charging your phone, so you're not having that battery run down in your, without a communication method for a little while. As we go ahead and show you here now the tornado safety tips. We're going to have a threat across Central and South Florida maybe in the afternoon to evening tomorrow. You got to be careful with that. I know there's some stuff out there in the Gulf now. We've seen maybe some water spout potential, but as we look ahead, tomorrow it could be, something where at medium for Orlando. Might have to raise that to high for that tornado threat as we're looking at things there for parts of Central Florida, as we're kind of trying to give you guys the very latest here on exactly what's happening. Just trying to let you guys know exactly what's going on. So when the tornado watch and play, you want to stay tuned for the latest and charge your devices. You want to have multiple ways to receive alerts. As I see a whole bunch of the updates from the Weather Service coming on in here at 11:01. The different continuations of the watches and the warnings. But I just wanted to tornado watch and play. These are tropical storm surge, hurricane, by the way. Is what I'm seeing. It all continued as announced, and nothing new yet. But I'll try to pass it along if there is something new. But tornado watch means stay tuned for the latest and charge your devices. Have multiple ways to receive alerts. A tornado warning means a tornado has been detected using radar or spotted. So you want to try to avoid taking Sentinel home, and the hurricane winds, same deal. Those are really vulnerable. They could be blown apart here in some of these stronger winds, and that's why there's some mandatory evacuations closer to where the storm's going to hit for those mobile homes. And we saw some of that in our area, especially in the Big Bend during Helene, with that, danger in play there. And the mobile homes is not a great place to be. But just get inside a sturdy building, put as many walls between you and the outside as possible. Protect yourself from flying debris by putting on a bicycle helmet. Very important here. As we're looking at things there in our covered area, we're always going to be on top of things for the 62 counties in terms of tornado warned storms. So we're in Bradford County, and I'm on top of things here for the 62 counties. I know Duval, Alachua, we'll be watching for all of you. I suspect if we get tornado warnings, they'd be more in the southern zones here, like, maybe Dixie, but Gilchrist, Levy, Alachua, Putnam, St. John's, Flagler, Marion, probably more likely, maybe something declared Duval because they're a little closer to the coast, but the threat would probably more central and south based on where some cool air trying to come in, and the instability would be more limited than what we would see in other times of the year with a tropical system and based on the way the angle this is taken. So, let me see if there's any questions or comments. I don't think Jackson will change any of their alerts that I can tell from right off here, by the way, as we're just trying to give you the very latest. But again, let me just go ahead and again look at this here. Again, I know we had quite a few more of our counties under hurricane warning Helene, but this is still, something, could be very dangerous, could be deadly for some of our counties. And, the south, that's dangerous, even more grave. So we could have significant flash flooding in like St. John's, Putnam, Flagler, Marion, something in that corridor could get, we say isolated 12 for St. Augustine. I mean, I took out isolated 15 off of that. Because it's probably a little more likely if we got that, maybe it'd be more in Flagler, but you never know. So just be careful. Be careful. Remember to turn around, don't drown, even in a flash flooding situation. And here's the next 2 days in terms of that rainfall threat here. I know you can see that corridor in that yellow. That's, widespread totals, maybe upwards of 10 inches somewhere from Tampa to Orlando, give or take. And then that could shift north to south a little bit. But, just remember, turn around, don't drown. You see, this is so historic, maybe 3-4 inches widespread, and then a little more to, Flagler, St. John's, Putnam, Marion, that vicinity. So we'll look at that, obviously, and be very, careful. But cloudweather.com/radar gives you an interactive look at things when we're not on the air. I'm doing a lot here coming up with Milton, making that landfall probably a little over 24 hours from now down toward west central Florida. And I was evacuating from storm surge. You really only need to get away from the rising water arrest, so you can technically just evacuate inland. But if you want to take maybe a vacation with nicer weather and not be in the danger of a tree falling, if you're like moving to Orlando for a few days with this, because of all that wind that's going to come through there, And then you might want to go to a place where you're not going to see the rain, like New Orleans or Mobile or Atlanta, or places that are just, Tallahassee may get a little bit rain. Albany not expecting rain. Those are places to go as well, depending on hotel availability. I mean, maybe not even going to Mississippi. I mean, you see, there is, pretty free of rain in a pretty good area. I would advise against some of those Helene hard hit areas as you go to like South Carolina or, and Western North Carolina, some of those areas there and East Georgia, depending on where you go, you gotta be a little more careful because of where Helene hit. It's about trying to get away from the imminent danger right now. So, as we're obviously in alarm mode for this potentially catastrophic threat for the state of Florida. And here's that, topic that I was talking about, the cool low temperatures that are expected behind Hurricane Milton across our local area. So tonight, 70 degrees. I mean, we're at 74 right now here east to start. Tomorrow night, 70 degrees. We're going to have the moisture in here, obviously, a lot more widespread. On Friday, 59 degrees for that low temperature. And on Saturday morning, 57 degrees. So you got to need a light jacket. If you're without power, it might not be the worst thing, but, probably something we don't want to keep the windows too much, at night open there, unless it's, just really hot in the house, then maybe you do, but it's something where it could actually start getting a little bit cool in there if you're not used to it. I mean, during the day, we're talking about closer to 80, so it can still get pretty warm during the day if you're without power, but at least we're not talking about 90 and 70. It's 80 and 60, give or take. So that's a little bit more manageable in our area without power. For the south, it'll be a little warmer, but we're not talking about 70 either, probably 60s for the lows, even in like central Florida after the storm passes, when a lot of you guys are without power, maybe for days or even a week or more in some cases, depending on just, with so much population density, there could be a, really extensive area, that has long lasting power outages. So got to keep that in mind here. Let me see. I want to check a couple more things. I'll be wrapping this up pretty soon, but I want to try to be really thorough about this, obviously. So let's see the Doppler across the state right now. Let's go ahead and do that for everybody at home. We'll switch back on over toward the other system as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things, trying to be as thorough as we can here with this situation. It's all about protecting you, your friends, and your family. So there's the Doppler right now. We have some stuff off the coast, though. Southwest Florida will be watching, okay? But there's some rotation down there, so that'll be something to watch. Low chance of a tornado watch there right now, but later on it'll be a different story. As we look there, I know further on up, you can see this is not necessarily probably going to be any type of severe threat, but there's a little weak rotation. I was looking earlier on the velocity, didn't really see too much, but some heavy downpours here in the overall pattern. Northeasterly type of winds. Nassau, Camden, northern Duval counties getting some heavier downpours here on this Tuesday evening. It feels like it could be later in the week as busy as we've been, but Tuesday evening here, it is October 8th, 2024, and tomorrow's the 9th, and then on that very early, time frame there, in that very early time frame, those wee hours of the 10th, 6 years to the day of Michael, we're expecting the name that replaced in Milton to hit the state of Florida. Also as a major hurricane, a different part of the state. Maybe not as a 5 like Michael did, but still very, very severe. It could be more costly because of the population. It probably will be more costly in terms of the population, even if the worst damage from the wind isn't as bad. The surge factor could be about the same in some cases as Michael, though. And you think of Mexico Beach, how that was wiped out. Somewhere along this coast, we're going to probably have communities wiped out here that are even more populated than what we had toward Mexico Beach during Hurricane Michael. So that's the problem. I mean, you got to keep that in mind here. And I mean, power is going to be out for a while because of so many folks that live down here compared to other parts of the state. If it goes like Sarasota across, there's not going to be quite as many that have the power outages, possibly. I mean, if it goes Tampa or Orlando, but it's not going to make much of a difference. It's going to be, a lot of power outages compared to storms that hit the Panhandle, because, I mean, the storm's going to be pretty big, powerful, but it's hidden where there's a lot more people that live here. So that's the problem. I know so many impacts here, obviously, with Milton as we're tracking the situation. I mean, it's just, remarkable what we're going to be dealing with here with a Category 5 storm. Temperatures right now, you see mid-upper 70s in central Florida, low to mid-north. Generally, I'm in Tallahassee, 78, but I'm looking at Lake City to Gainesville to Jacksonville. Of course, St. Augustine's outlier too, but you kind of get the idea as we look at things. Let's go ahead and see that Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale. Again, catastrophic damage there is anticipated, Roy, because you got to prepare. The latest update had more of a Cat 4 showing. I didn't double check that because our system sometimes is a little bit awkward, so I want to make sure I'm looking at that right. As I'm looking here, just bear with me for a second. I want to make sure that's not a Cat 4 approaching, but I assume it would be. I assume it would be because of the situation that we're in. With it being a Cat 5 right now. Yeah, they have 130 and 24, which is just, into Cat 4. So, yeah, that's something to really take heed of, obviously. Cat 3, Cat 2 in this situation is still going to have to serve terrible. It's not a path they generally have. Even a Cat 1 would be bad, so that's not going to matter a bunch in that regard, except you're not going to have as much wind damage, which is a positive. But even a Cat 1, we saw a barrel had widespread. I mean, we had millions of people in the dark from a Category 1 around Houston. This is going to be a 3 or a 4 probably when it hits. So that kind of tells the story in a very densely populated area. Of course, we care about our folks so much in our viewing circle, Taylor, Dixie, Levy, but there's not near as many people that live there in terms of population and, as near as many homes with electricity, businesses with electricity, think of Madison and Suwanee and the like. Not near as many homes there or stores are down further in the state, which is just, very densely populated, very densely, packed as we're looking at things. So, again, that's very serious in that regard. It's more densely packed around Tampa, but still densely packed in other areas there, obviously, and that's very serious. So, again, just trying to give you the latest. I'm putting up some more high-res information. I want to make sure this is, I'm going to put HRRR, and it's not a hurricane model. And I may go to GFS2 then. Okay, there are only certain ones we can use on here. I'm just going to check to see what all I have and see which ones. So, let me just kind of try to give you an idea of what could happen. Is, I'm not going to see the wind situation perfectly, but let me go ahead and jump on over here to our other source. This is what we're expecting at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. I see on this side here, I mean, that could be a tornado threat right there. I mean, Sebring over to Ward. I mean, that's Port St. Lucie. Those look like hooks. I mean, to be quite honest, Okeechobee, there could be some tornadoes that pop up here. That's serious, folks. It's interesting to see how well defined it is in the model in here. As you see, that could be a tornado threat in the afternoon, but then you have the actual storm and out here to the west, and then you also see maybe some severe weather here in this line, Wauchula down to Cape Coral, interferes with the last second, maybe evacuations that are trying to take place. As you see here, more of that threat. I mean, it's not up here really because you don't have the instability as much. It's down here. I mean, Lakeland could have tornadoes on the ground, Clewiston, Everglades. I mean, having a low pressure that deep with that, type of factor in play, that could be problematic. And then you see that going through central Florida there around sunset, Orlando. I mean, that could go through St. Cloud around 9 o'clock with some type of tornado threat. But then the main event, it doesn't show as good in the model because it's not a hurricane model. But, I mean, this is a major hurricane. I know it doesn't look like it on this because this is more going to focus on severe weather. But this is a very serious storm coming on through. We're not going to stick on this long. You can kind of see where the eye is, but it doesn't do it justice. I mean, I'll put the window on this. Yeah, that helps some, but I mean, go back this up some. I mean, it's not picking up quite right on that stack. It could be, as I go to GFS, it could be kind of, overdoing it. If I throw it out of the head a little, if it's underdoing the low, but we shall see on that. This is here, the wind forecast, HRRR, as we're looking there. Those whites and reds and oranges, considerable, concern. But it's kind of tricky here with this too because it's not going to do it justice either. I mean, this is going to be much more powerful. I know it's going to kind of get sheared apart, but the winds are going to be, so significant in here. This model in here, it's not doing it justice. I almost feel like I shouldn't even keep showing this because it's going to be a lot more, serious in terms of the actual impact. It just doesn't, this, it's really supposed to, make you want to prepare, and this isn't exactly doing that here. So let me go ahead and, I mean, the winds do. I mean, that does, make you really concerned there because these are really strong winds along the coast, and this is 2 a.m. on that Thursday. But that's part of the eye wall coming across Tampa to Orlando, and it could look somewhat like that, but it'll look a little bit at least more intact than that on radar. I mean, it does tell us there's gonna be more, weight to the rain and the wind, on the northern side as it's coming ashore potentially. But the southern side we're gonna have the storm surge and that effect. So I will say that to you here. Let me go ahead and pull on a model overlay. Bear with me here. So this one here is a little further north, and that's not, an ideal situation if it followed this. Let me go ahead and try something else. Give me a moment. Okay, so let's try that. That is a little further down there. I'm just trying to kind of go to some other information, the older information, I think. Now that there isn't great because that still has, this is the latest GFS run, and we'll have a new one soon. Because you see, at first, they don't, now the wind is pushing up to St. Petersburg, which could be problematic, but it's not pushing right in the bay, but then it kind of does here as it comes ashore because it's so close. I mean, it doesn't come right up, through some of these other areas further up, but then it kind of still pushes the water in the bay to some degree, which could be problematic. So it's, tricky here. If it's right, close to Bradenton still, you could have a problem. It's just, it's near and south, but right near it. If it comes right through here, you could still kind of get that water to push up and have problems in the bay. So I think that's why they adjusted that up there 9 to 13, but in the bay and south 10 to 15. So that's what they're going with in the latest storm surge numbered, and that makes sense there as we're looking at things. So as we continue to watch the situation, you can see some of that, again, it's kind of more powerful, way more powerful than what that kind of look like. But I mean, we got a Cat 5 hurricane. It's gonna be sheared apart some. I think that's why the modeling is so, it's kind of making it look like that. But yes, it's still gonna be very serious with those winds down to the surface. And this is a very serious situation here, folks. As we're looking at things, you can see that eye so hard to find. I mean, look at that. Look at that here, folks. I'll go to our other view on this. There's a meso view of it. Look how well defined that is. That's just an awful, scary looking sight here, folks. It's headed toward the state of Florida. Milton is to cause destruction, sadly. Another $1 billion disaster for the state of Florida. The southeast, in particular, the state of Florida. This time around, I'm going to focus, on Florida. Other situation with Helene, North Carolina had the worst of the fatalities there, but this is going to be pretty much a Florida event as we're looking. There are some alerts a little bit in Georgia, South Carolina, but mainly a Florida event here, my friends. You got to really hunker down as we're looking ahead here in the timeline. Very serious situation as we do anticipate, as we just really need you guys to take this so seriously. Again, this is a graphic about storm surge. Over 12 feet of storm surge expected in some spots. That's going to tear up our homes. I mean, it's going to be way over people's heads, and it's a life-threatening situation. Even 6 feet, give or take, was deadly in Pinellas County back in less than 2 weeks ago. We had a number of folks lose their lives in drownings, electrocutions from, that water coming on in, and it was so tragic. And this could be a lot worse if folks don't heed the orders here to leave. It's not something that, is a preferred thing to have to do to have people evacuate. But if your life is in danger, that's what you got to do. Your life is, the most important thing, as it's been said, and I've said it before in coverage, and I have to say it again. It's been said by officials here in the state of Florida, you can rebuild your house, but your life, it cannot be rebuilt. It cannot be replaced. You can replace your home, but we can not replace your life. So Again, so important to keep that in mind here as we're looking at things at this late hour. Again, trying to give you the very latest. We're not going to have, another update tonight here necessarily. I know we generally come on a little later with our late Tuesday update. This is our, very extended update here on Milton here tonight. We'll be back though plenty in the, hours and days, here next couple of days to come with extensive coverage on Milton. It's an extremely, extremely dangerous situation. Now let me go ahead and I have a loop here of the satellite. I just want to kind of, so it's very scary. I mean, to be quite honest, and this is just what's happening here. This is what's happening here in the here and now. So let me go ahead and pull that on up for you guys at home. I mean, that's just, it's a buzzsaw. Look at a Category 5 hurricane, and it's headed for devastation here in the state of Florida coming up. Not as much like Stark, Gainesville, but downstate. That's where the problems are going to be. There will be some problems in St. John's and Flagler. It'll still be a little dangerous in Stark, but St. John's, Flagler, more so, and then really dangerous further south, in that hurricane warning. We're very concerned about folks in that storm surge threat. You need to heed those evacuation orders. I cannot emphasize that enough, because that water could drown you. This is something that folks, along, even if it's, further south, unless it gets closer to right where Ian hit, which we're not expecting that far south right now, it's, somewhere in that corridor of Pogan, this is the worst storm surge they've seen in their lives, whether it's Tampa or a little further south, but probably north of where Ian came across. I mean, it's going to be this an awful situation. It's going to be similar, the surge will be to Ian, but it's going to be in an area, if it's Tampa, a lot more, even though it's really populated south, where so many people lost their lives, this is still a lot more populated than that. If it's Tampa, pretty populated there around Bradenton and, Sarasota, for sure. A lot of folks live there, and, it could be catastrophic. It could be a horrific situation. There could be emergency calls coming in tomorrow night about people drowning in their homes, and rescuers can't get to them. That's why you evacuate now. That's why you run from the water. That's why you get out here, folks. Again, it's very serious. This is very serious there along the coast of Florida's west side. So, I mean, you see the lightning right near the center. I put that on there with the loop. It doesn't show it all the way back. There is lightning earlier, just the lightning system doesn't pick up that far back. But this is, a very volatile storm. It's, again, a Category 5. One of the stronger storms, and it did weaken to 160 from 165 earlier, but one of the stronger storms we've ever had in recorded history in the Atlantic Basin. I mean, one of the stronger, not the highest at this point, but, one of the stronger, weather systems we ever had in the last 100 years on Earth. I mean, that's how bad this is here, folks. You gotta take it seriously. You have to heed those evacuation orders. I hate to keep repeating that over and over, but it's necessary because I hated seeing, I think it was, just dozens of folks lost their lives. Anybody that loses their life, obviously, in these situations is a needless loss of life, but they have so many folks just, not getting out in time from Ian there with that surge coming up at Fort Myers Beach. It was just tragic. You gotta, he does orders. If it's 3 to 5 feet or more in the forecast, you have to get out. And that does include some of our East Coast counties too. It shouldn't be catastrophic, but that can still be deadly. And the evacuation orders are there for a reason. Of course, I'm way more concerned for the West Coast, but still, problematic to the East Coast. But my really push here tonight is for those folks on the West Coast that, down there, Tampa South, that are hesitant, they're stubborn, they don't want to get out. Get out. You can replace your home, but you cannot replace your life. So, your life cannot be replaced, but your home can be replaced. Again, so serious here, sobering sight. All that purple, so many cold cloud tops around this. Around the center here of circulation, and something that we're gonna be talking about in meteorology for a long time. Just seeing some of the alerts continuing out of Tampa office here. Storm surge threat, hurricane threat. It's real. It's very real here, and it's gonna be on the doorstep there. As we look tomorrow night at this time, it's going to be right there, right, probably just, at this point, tomorrow night will be just before landfall with our hurricane. Let me go ahead and pull up our other mode. Bear with me here just a second. As I try to give you the latest. Let me go ahead and pull up our other mode. Again, there's your hurricane warning area. Gotta heed these warnings, you know, in terms of being prepared. Expect to lose power if you're in this red area. You know, I had my other map, but honestly, at this point, that does it justice as well. Expect to lose power in that red zone, and that does, you know, go up all the way to the St. John Duval line. But I wanted to pull in a radar because I see some stuff on here rotating a little. So let me go ahead and jump this on. We do have some storms here in the Gulf with some rotation. We could start getting some tornado warnings along the west coast, but the bigger threat will be later on. But still, southwest Florida, west central Florida, those that haven't left or aren't necessarily needing to leave, make sure you have ways to get alerts overnight, just in case here from a lower end so far for tonight. Tornado threat is it'll pick up during the day tomorrow. As we continue to look at all this, let's pull in here. Where do I want to go on this? We have the infrared satellite. Let me go ahead and pull it in so you can see the state in relation to this. And I think unless I have any questions, that's how I'll kind of wrap it up here tonight. So I'm loading that on in here now. Takes us a second to load that, you know, wider shot here in our system. So it's not kind of dumping all over the place on us. See if there's any questions or comments. I don't see any, but I appreciate you guys watching here. To stay safe out there. As again, this hurricane, you know, it seems like it's headed for devastation. As we just see here, making sure there's nothing else I missed here in our coverage for tonight of this very devastating scenario that is impending. I mean, this is just, you know, sobering imagery, you know, that we're looking at. Sobering imagery here tonight on this Tuesday night. Some areas, just like with Helene, some areas, you know, never going to be the same. Some lives will likely be lost. I think we already had one down toward Mexico, according to weather fatalities, WX fatalities there on Twitter/X. But again, we're expecting a situation where, you know, there's going to be tremendous loss of life, but people don't heed the warnings. And even if they do, and they do run from the water, the wind factor, there's going to be trees falling a lot of places, even in areas you don't maybe think about, like Orlando and St. Cloud and Kissimmee here, and all around that, maybe, you know, Lakeland and over to Ordehigh Junction, and then a little less populated there, but those are areas you're not expecting stuff to be falling all around, and it's going to be falling all around you, potentially, in terms of, you know, every few minutes you'll probably hear a tree limb, or even, you know, at some point trees falling while you're huddled inside your house here, maybe, you know, needing to get that into your room. Point. So, you know, that's very serious stuff. And if you feel unsafe in your structure, you have a tree that's leaning or something like that, or if you're in a mobile home, make sure you're taking advantage of those emergency shelters. You know, that's something to keep in mind. Of course, if you're under an order to evacuate, you need to evacuate. But, you know, those shelters, if you feel like you're in danger, you have a tree leaning, you know, and you're in the Orlando area, well, that tree very well may come down in this storm. Even trees that aren't leaning, the wind might push some of them down here, and you're going to have power lines down. You're going to have power poles down all across the corridor. Maybe not, you know, all that area I was showing where we're expecting, you know, the hurricane conditions. But there's going to be a corridor here where we have a lot of damage. Trees down, power lines down, power poles down. I mean, you do not need to go out during the height of this storm because you could have a tree fall very quickly in your car. And it could end your life. I mean, so that's why you got to be really careful here. You got to treat this like a tornado's headed your way, because this is pretty much what it's going to be like. You know, an area like Orlando, again, you guys have not had this 20 at least years. I mean, something like this. I mean, we had the tornadoes to the north in I think it was 07, but in 04 was the last time we had a wind event to this degree at least, and it might be worse than 04's Charlie, but that's what we're kind of saying right now for the Orlando area. Now, storms are different. Some areas will get it worse than Charlie, I'm sure. Some might get it not quite as bad as they got it in that Central Florida, you know, Orlando TV market as they did in 04. But again, this is very serious. Very serious. I think we've said enough for now. I'm going to wrap it up. Have a great night. Make sure you guys, you know, stay safe the best you can. I mean, there's all the different platforms are on. Facebook, KC Cloud WX there. Cloud's Weather. Twitter/X at Cloud KC. YouTube there at Clouds Weather, Twitch Cloud Weather, cloud.com has that interactive radar available. I mean, one more thing to get in here. I know in Helene we had the power flashes live on air, at night. We had that in Debbie too, but I'll see Helene, what we were covering live, because I expect you guys to be seeing that tomorrow night and tonight across parts of Central Florida and West Central Florida, Southwest Florida. For folks that are, staying put, the sky's gonna light up with power flashes. So here's a look, just really quickly at what that can really do in terms of illuminating the sky. I tell you what, we have one more. Oh, okay, it went dark again. Power flashes all over the place. Live on the air, Perry, Florida. Okay, so I just wanted to show you guys that there, how things were looking in Helene as the power plants are going to be lighting up the sky here. So we saw that in the tornadoes in the 90s around Kissimmee, and that's going to be something that happens there tomorrow night, and then even later in the morning. I mean, that track had it as we were looking there, as we were looking a little bit later on. I mean, that has it at 8 a.m. there. So I stopped the loop real quick, 8 a.m. So right after sunrise, about 7:30, 8 a.m. there. Right when the sun's coming up, there's still a chance you might, it might not be just started. You might be seeing a little bit of blue sky if there's still an eye actually left. It may not be, and it might not really be safe to go out in it because it'll be kind of collapsing. But could have something like that over Polk County, give or take. Maybe Osceola County at 8 a.m. on that Thursday, but the strongest winds will be generally surrounding that, but some of that will be kind of sheared up to the north a little and on the western side there as well to some degree. So that wraps up for now. Have a great night out there. Stay safe as we watch our very dangerous Hurricane Milton. It's such a serious situation, and we're going to have more coverage here in the hours and days to come.